think this guy's got the right idea. Okay, so this is Bighorn National Forest. It's kind of in the center of Wyoming. Beautiful area, camping. Still early in the morning. And there's cows out in the distance. We'll see. I like it. Jay, you would love it.
Like,
subscribe,
click the bell, please.
Thank you. So the book Strategic Relocation, some of you may be familiar, some not, has just come out, and this is the 4th edition. So this is going to give, well, this is how I did some research on, where I'm planning on buying the strategic relocation investment property, to figure out where you want to have not necessarily it could be a second house, it could be an investment property, it could be something you're going to do Airbnb, but it's giving you a second option. And if you've been watching the news lately, you can tell that there's been a lot of crazy stuff going on. And especially if you're in a major metropolitan area, you might want to have to, leave that area for a while, relocate to somewhere. And it's good to have an option, either if it's an investment property like Airbnb, something you're going to use on the side, or a rental house or something like that. I'm using it primarily to pick a place, but I need somewhere as a primary residence also. So tax structure is one of the things I was looking for. And I also like the smaller towns. I go through a few states on there. And again, Wisconsin is nice, it's beautiful, but I do want to have a secondary option based on some of the politics that are going on here. So in the book he has a lot of stuff. He goes through each state. So again, he puts a star system, and then he goes through like land, urban planning, food production, traffic, taxes, corruption, crime, personal liberty, gun liberty, medicine, schooling, and stuff like that. Every state is in there. He also goes through regions. So I do recommend getting it if you're interested in that sort of stuff, or you can watch. There's a bunch of videos online. I will go through Wyoming right now, and I will go through some other states later. He also has Secure Home. So if you are planning on building somewhere, lots of stuff to consider: plumbing, building structures, systems. Again, huge architecture, how to build your walls. So if you're looking at something that's more secure than the typical stick-built home, that is available also. Anyways, we'll go through this, and we'll talk about Wyoming today. So I just came off that road up there on that hill. Came down to this parking lot. Just wanted to take a look at it. Boat ramp, it's a beautiful area. Oh my gosh, I want to pull the paddleboard out and go paddleboarding, but I have an appointment in a couple hours at the real estate agency. Yeah, beautiful, peaceful. There's lots of people camping around here. National Forest. Yeah, if I didn't have an appointment, I would paddleboard around this lake. This is amazing. Beautiful. And of course, some jackass is going to come and sit next to me. Well, I had it all to myself for about 1 minute. Okay, so that's like not a geyser, but a hot springs where the water would come out. That formation formed. Anyway, so why Wyoming? So again, Wyoming. Why am I looking at Wyoming? There's this book that I've looked at before, and a new edition has just come out called Strategic Relocation, and it goes through a bunch of criteria, and I'll put some of these up on the screen as I go and I talk about them. But I still plan on living a good chunk of the year overseas, and what I realized is I do kind of need a point, or like a home base, somewhere where I can keep my stuff, and when I come back to the US, I need an address. I need somewhere that's available, a place to keep my stuff. So I'd like somewhere that's freedom-oriented, away from a lot of the political drama, if you know what I mean. I don't want any rioters showing up at my door. And if they do, I want to have the ability to defend myself. So Second Amendment stuff is still pretty important. So I'll be staying away from the socialist-oriented states. So some of the criteria would be cost of living. Wyoming has a higher cost of living probably than a lot of the other places, but it's not bad. There are no state taxes. Property taxes aren't too bad, and it's beautiful. It also has a very low population density. There's a bunch of maps that deal with population density and population breakdown, that sort of stuff. And Wyoming is one of the better ones. Alaska, I'll talk about some other states too as I go through this, but Wyoming is one of the ones I looked at first. So population density, Second Amendment, and Second Amendment stuff more like castle doctrine, stand your ground sort of stuff, and the availability of purchase and restrictions in town and that sort of stuff, concealed carry, open carry, constitutional carry. So politics, I usually don't talk about politics in my travel videos because I think of travel as a way to escape a lot of that crap and a lot of way to not have to think about it, even though it is always prevalent. Wyoming seems a little more libertarian, so I like this little park. There's the river that runs by here, and then there is a hot springs right there, another mound, hot springs mound, and there's water coming out of the top of that, and it runs down and basically goes through here into the water. I'll walk over by this. And this is a little park that's right, maybe 5-minute walk from the hotel I'm staying at. And these are some of the stats on Wyoming. And this is the one of the hot spring mounds. And you can see there's still water coming out of the top of it, trickling down. Some of the negatives about Wyoming: it is a drier climate. It's much more difficult, I think, to grow your own food out on a plot of land unless you're near a water source like this. Yeah, if you can afford irrigation or something, it's a lot easier, but if you're planning on going up and living in the mountains, you're going to have to worry about water much more so than some other states. It's also relatively cold here, cold and dry in the wintertime, and hot in the summer. It was 90 the past few days in the daytime, and it got down to the 40s at night. This town has about 3,000 people in it. It has a medical facility, it has a McDonald's. It does not have like a Walmart or a Home Depot or a Lowe's. Those are about an hour away. So with a low population density, you have more travel involved in keeping maybe some of those requirements that you need. That you're going to end up using Amazon Prime, having that stuff shipped out to you. Sorry, I scared some ducks off the bank. Duck and ducklings. So, strategic relocation. Again, there's several states that probably would meet the criteria, and I think you can find areas in almost any state that are acceptable if you build a criteria list on what you're looking for to get out of the major city. I would definitely recommend getting out of major cities, going out to the a little more rural area, or even small towns like this. There are plenty of small towns all over the country that have much more relaxed atmosphere. They're not so politically charged, and there's nobody rioting and breaking down local businesses, that sort of stuff. Worried about getting into conflicts in the street. That said, every place has its issues, so it's just a bit of risk mitigation. This is a hot spring bank here. I'm gonna try and go up on top of it. Like some of the reason I chose the Philippines, it was English speaking, much different. I like the islands, I like the tropical, I like the beach. So again, it met a lot of my criteria. So I'm kind of going through and building something like that for the U.S. also. So there are mineral hot springs here, kind of like, and they're open to this, so kind of like public baths. They're open to everybody, and you can come in here and hang out in the Fountain of Youth, supposedly. But I saw a bunch of people yesterday. There's one down here and there's another one up there. Yeah, there were a bunch of 60 or 70 plus women in there who were very eager for me to come join them. That's what I told Jay. So, zoning is another one. Some states have very strict zoning requirements, and other places are much more freedom-oriented, let you do what you want. Like, for an example, the house here had a tiny house, and then it had RV hookups on the same lot. And it was primarily set up for an RVer who would basically travel most of the year and come back and stop in Wyoming to do laundry or whatever, basically a place to store your stuff. And that had a lot of appeal to me also, so I was kind of looking at that as one of my options. But getting into risk mitigation, so why would I do that? Or why would I look at a rental property? So I think like here, there's hot springs. So they're saying this area is volcanic. So one of the risks you have to mitigate is volcanic activity. That's true, but however, I don't rank that as high on one of the risks that I'm mitigating. My risk would probably be political chaos, I guess, or something going along the riots and that sort of thing, where in a much more urban area, if something were to happen, you would be trapped in the city and not able to get out. Long number two would be inflation. And if you think about how much money the U.S. prints versus how much they're taking in, there seems to be almost no politician who is able to control the spending of the country. So it's always easier for them just to print more money, deficit spending, where they're not worried about the budget at all. They just say, hey, we'll give you this free stuff if you vote for me. They're more looking at a 4-year election cycle or a 2-year election cycle than they are the 10-year, 20-year financial health of the country. So why would you buy a rental house? A rental house is kind of like gold. The price pretty much stays the same, just the dollar or the currency loses its value. So it seems like it's gaining value, but in reality it's a combination of supply and demand and the amount of money that's being pumped into the system. So over the past few months, I've noticed, and I talked to the real estate agent here, there are tons of people buying property because interest rates are super low, money's being pumped into the banking system, and so it's super easy to buy a place. So a lot of people are getting out of the cities and buying rural properties. That said, a rural rental property, they're looking for the cabin like up in the woods, like something up in the mountains, beautiful view and all that sort of stuff. I'm looking for the tiny little house in a small little city like this that I can rent. And so the rental price the rent you can get on a monthly basis justifies the price. So that asset is going to pay for itself, and the more money the government prints, that value or that asset will stay the same value. It'll hold its value while the currency reduces in value, if that makes sense. So that's why I look at rental houses. That's one of the reasons. I also look at my time involved. I'm getting much more lazy than I was when in my 20s and 30s. I would buy, like, there's this fourplex in Wyoming that it makes a lot of cash, $2,600 or $2,400 per month on rent. However, it needs a lot of work. Back in 10, 15 years ago, I would have not thought twice. I would have jumped on it. I'd have spent, after work, I'd have worked on this thing and I'd have spent all my time fixing up this fourplex. Now, I'm not sure I want to spend, 6, 7 months of my time focused on that, even though it would be a very good cash earner and cash flow down the road. So I'm still going through my decision-making process on that fourplex. However, that's why I look at rental properties versus the dream home, or my friend in Wisconsin. He has his prepper compound. He raises chickens for meat. He has chickens for eggs. He actually had cattle for a while. He has his own pigs. They have a couple horses, and they have a good chunk of land out there. They're isolated, easily defendable. They're not going to have any problems. The only thing I have been telling him is he needs to grow more vegetables. He's concentrated too much on meat. But compared to most people, especially compared to me, he is doing very well. He's pretty much set. So doing something like that in Wyoming would be much more expensive than doing it in the Midwestern states. However, the Midwestern states have shaky politics Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota have very suspect politics these days in some areas. I know in like some counties versus other counties, it's night and day difference. Big cities versus rural farming communities. So again, I'm looking for that in Wyoming. There are very few large metropolitan areas in Wyoming. There's almost none. So most of the voters are rural based, and they have the rural hometown values, that sort of stuff. If you're looking for, compared to the metropolis or the large cities, yeah, you're gonna miss out on a lot of the restaurants, a lot of the E's, Trader Joe's, Costco, that sort of stuff. But you have stuff like this, you know, you're much more scenic and rural oriented. Okay, so I'm going through the book right now. The book definitely favors the mountainous areas in the west, predominantly Montana, Idaho, Utah, that area. Wyoming falls in there, but it receives a little bit of a lower mark for the lack of water, the low precipitation, even though you can see I am located on a river in this area. The book does cover every state and all regions of the country, including Canada. It also does a breakdown of other regions in the world in the beginning of the book. Primarily I'm going to stick with the US for this. So it also goes into the regions like the Ozarks in the southern part of the US, the Appalachian area, and some of the plateaus. But each state has areas that it believes are good. If you can't get out of your state, if you can't relocate to the best possible state, if you're stuck where you are, it gives you options for dealing with each state. Okay, overall Wyoming receives 3.5 stars. Breaking down some of the facts, the climate is a high desert, low humidity. It is windy through the I-80 corridor, moderate summers but cold winters. Population density is very low. It only has 6 people per square mile, ranked 49th in the nation. So probably one of the lowest population densities in the 48 states. Cost of living average 101 out of 100. There is a higher cost of living here than other potential states you could choose. I think a lot of that has to do with some of the very rich people living out by Jackson, and the oil and gas industry does provide pretty good jobs when it is not being heavily regulated. The private land uses availability is poor. 55% of the land is federally owned. A lot of that is tied up in some of the best forests, and some of the best mountains are federally owned, and there's also a lot of oil and gas leases. Food production, moderate. There's a lot of ranching. If you have irrigation or if you live by a river, you have better potential than some people who are up in the high desert areas. Health environment, there is water quality is excellent when it's fed by mountain springs, and also there is good solar potential pretty much everywhere in the state. Low air pollution due to the heavily westerly winds. Politics, Wyoming has no major metro area, so the rural areas are usually not dominated by that major metro area, so the politics are generally more conservative and less burdensome to the smaller communities. Taxes, ranked one of the lowest taxed states in the nation. It does have an average sales tax of about 4% for the state, and then the counties add on, so you might have like another 2%, so overall like 6% sales tax. There is no income tax and relatively low property tax. Wyoming is ranked in the bottom 10, I think, for property taxes. So a lot of those taxes get paid by the oil and gas industry, similar to Alaska. So the state has more money coming from other sources, so they tax the people less. However, with regulation and the way things are going, there is a big potential for that to change down the road. Crime, overall crime is below average, and it lists out the murder and rape and all that stuff. And it's much lower in some of the smaller towns, and even non-existent in some places. Especially compared to some of the major metropolitan areas. Personal liberty, it is ranked above average, 36 out of 50, which it is down from 31 in 2011. I talk a little bit more about the hot springs here, then we will talk about gun liberty and Second Amendment issues after this next little bit. If you like the video, click the like button, or go to the comment section and tell me what you would do different. So it looks like the water's coming from up over there, flowing down through here. You can see it smoking down into the major pool, and then it goes off the edge. Yeah, you can definitely smell the sulfur. It smells like Yellowstone. I feel it. You see the algae. It's hot. It's probably like the hottest bath water I could stand. Yeah, like I couldn't put my foot in that and stand without getting used to it. It's probably like the hottest bath water you could stand. And then even then it might be a little bit too hot. So that is where the water is coming from. It's boiling. I mean, it's pretty hot. And then it goes from there. It's basically coming through the hills, I guess. They showed the geology of it, where the water comes from. And it flows over there, and then over to the mounds, and over the edge, and into the river. There's a little trail there. I might go take a look at it. Beautiful, beautiful area. It is, I think it's about 4,000 feet here. So it's definitely high plains, desert-ish. More towards the Black Hills on the eastern side of Wyoming. It's a lot more green and a lot more trees. If you remember the video, shows me driving through that area. Yeah, there were a lot more pine trees. Here it's a lot more high desert. Reminds me of some of the places in Colorado or Nevada. Okay, Wyoming's rating for gun liberty is excellent. It is a constitutional carry state, and there are several states like this, and you can find this information on Wikipedia. But again, going back to my time in the military, I've been deployed to places where the population did not have any means to defend themselves, and what happened is a warlord or a gang would come in and basically take over that area and run them, and they would be under the thumb of those people. I noticed some people, this is a big deal. I grew up, with my uncles having weapons hanging in the back window of their pickup trucks as they drove around the farm. It was a tool, and it wasn't a big deal to them. And so I prefer to live in somewhere where that is still protected. So Wyoming meets a lot of criteria for me. The taxes, the low regulation, it's a very beautiful place, low population density. So that's one of the reasons I am definitely out there looking at Wyoming. Investment property wise, it is good for me to pick Wyoming. I can set up roots here. It takes a while to develop everything, so I think as time goes I will more and more set up in Wyoming, but I will always be going back to visit family and friends in Wisconsin. And of course overseas is still a big part of my plan. So this is some of the town. I actually came walking, there's a bridge over there, so I did like a big block. I walked across the bridge. This is like more of the Main Street municipal area. There's a bunch of, not a bunch, but there's a few cafes and restaurants up on the main street, up over there. There's a bunch of these smaller little houses like this. And that's down towards one of the main streets. Over there. The river is back that way. The park is back up over there. And this is the road back to my hotel. Very nice, very peaceful. This is probably 9 in the morning on a Sunday. There are a lot of tourists driving through, RV campers, that sort of stuff. So if you are looking at more of a mobile, transient, wanderlusting type of lifestyle, there are a lot of places that'll have a tiny little house and then an RV next to it. So I think there's a lot of retirees here also. And again, 3,000 people, about 4,000 feet altitude. Temperature in July is 90 during the daytime and 40s and 50s at night. There is snow in the wintertime, but it is low precipitation in this area compared to other states.